Shalom, I'm Jonathan Hessen, and this is TV7's Editor's Note. Today's edition, I am very pleased to welcome my dear friend, mentor, colleague, Brigadier General in Reserve, Yossi Kuperwasser, the president of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, a former Director General of the Israeli Ministry for Strategic Affairs, head of the IDF Intelligence Directorate's Research and Assessment Division, and a long list of other positions. It's always a pleasure to have you with us.
My pleasure, Jonathan.
General, when we're looking at the complexities that Israel is facing, today is, of course, a day mixed with many emotions. On the one hand, we're very happy to see all of the living hostages returned to us. We're waiting to see what is the outcome with those who were already murdered by the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates since October 7th of 2023 to date. But nonetheless, what is quite apparent is that, the strategic backbone of the State of Israel, namely the United States, remains adamant in its support for the State of Israel. It does indicate, of course, that within the complexities that arose over the last 2 years, there are shifts and there are new challenges arising. But nonetheless, in the whole fluidity of this scheme of multiple challenges, what is the core that you identify today as something worthy our time to discuss thoroughly?
Well, I think the most important thing is that there is a plan on the table that has the support of almost everybody, maybe with the exception of Hamas.
And the Iranians?
The Iranians not necessarily are against the plan, they're against certain elements of the plan.
Right.
And, but it doesn't matter if the Iranians support it or not. I don't count them for that respect. The plan has the support of the United States. The plan has the support of major Muslim and Arab players. The plan has the support of the Western world. And even Russia and China and other players around the globe are in favor of the plan. And it's a peace plan, as the President of the United States refers to it. Whether it is really about peace or not, we shall know in the end of the move.
Wouldn't we better classify it as a donors' conference of sorts?
The donors is nobody donate money just in order to donate money.
Right.
Everybody has expectations when they give money to some project. And not necessarily everybody has the same idea about what's going to happen in the end. So it's too early to say whether it's going to work or not. But one thing is clear, everybody wants to see Gaza turning into a place that does not constitute a threat for Israel. And they believe that this is going to be accomplished by moving forward along the plan that calls for Hamas demilitarization and disarmament, and calls for a large project of reconstruction in Gaza, and making sure that Gaza does not constitute a threat to Israel. That's, from an Israeli point of view, these are exactly the goals that Israel had in this war. We wanted to make sure that all the hostages come back. We wanted to make sure that Hamas is taken away, is removed from power in Gaza, and that Gaza is not a base for terror against Israel in the future. And this support, international support for that, is great. Now, all kinds of people have all kinds of ideas about what's going to happen after that. And in Article 19, if I remember correctly, in the plan, there is a reference to the possibility of moving towards self-determination of the Palestinians that might take the frame of statehood.
Well, the wording is important. I think it was actually 20 out of the 21-point plan, which everybody refers to it today as 20, but doesn't matter, where it says that the United States recognizes the Palestinian aspiration for statehood. It did not necessarily...
No, it recognizes that this is the aspiration of the Palestinians, but it recognizes that the plan might lead there. This is a major move that is something that Saudis can hinge to in order to move forward towards normalization.
Right.
Now we are all expecting something to happen. Nobody knows what is this something that's going to happen. What is the move that's going to be next, and attempt to normalize relations between Israel and its neighbors in the Middle East. It might be Indonesia, it might be Saudi Arabia, it might be Oman, it might be Syria, it might be something happening in Lebanon. Nobody knows where exactly this first move is going to take place. But once it happens, then there is an expectation of a domino effect, that more countries are going to come in, and it's all under the auspices of President Trump, the great President Trump, who managed to do things that were not achievable for 3,000 years, as he says. And so we are living in historic time. It's things that we were dreaming of yesterday may come a reality today, and we have to set free our imagination to understand what might happen. So we just have to wait and see. As always, this optimism should be a cautious optimism, because there are still some countries around the Middle East who have different ideas about what needs to happen and want to see that the plan fails. And we have Iran, first and foremost, leading those countries. They are very upset, and there's a growing pressure over Iran economically and militarily and state of mindly. And they are under pressure. The regime feels haunted. And we have to worry about their efforts to regroup and rearm their proxies, and maybe even consider escalating the situation in a way out of the dire situation they are caught in. We have to bear that in mind. And I think the idea of inviting them to the Sharm el-Sheikh summit was a brilliant idea. If you are looking for a way out, this is the way out, not escalating, but join the trend. Give up the idea that you need to enrich uranium and have a nuclear program. Instead, join everybody else in the movement towards peace and prosperity in the Middle East. That's a brilliant move. They refused to move in this direction, but still, it's something that in Tehran, I guess some people are saying, why didn't we go there?
Well, I can give a couple of answers why they didn't go there. I think, if we look at the broader scheme of things, because Gaza is a question mark where it's heading from here. Hamas has already come out and stated that negotiating disarmament is off the table. They're not going to do so. Obviously, what they say and what will dictate their discourse are two different things. But ultimately, we can see that within the composition of the broader Middle East, the major players today include 3, maybe 4 actors, namely the State of Israel, Turkey, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and Egypt. And when we look at
I think
the GCC
the most important
countries,
the most important player is the United States.
well, naturally, but I'm talking about the regional level. Because despite the United States setting discourse in a certain direction and being the most important player, undisputably so, from a strategic power competition level, the attention span of the United States to the fine-tuning of the details is going to decrease over time. Because ultimately what comes down to this region are the actors themselves. And as U.S. Ambassador to Turkey and Special Envoy to the situation in Syria, Tom Barrack, has stated, we have a specific mandate. We understand that we need to get from A to E, but ultimately all the ulterior motives of the actors involved, I'm not familiar with those. And those ulterior motives do exist. The Turks have them, Israel has them, Iran has them, Egypt has them, all of them have them, because it's ultimately about national security interests of each country that those countries seek to pursue. Where does those various efforts converge with ultimately the challenges presented in today's broader sphere?
Well, of course you're right. But the brilliance of the American plan is that they managed to, in spite of all these complexities, find a way to bring everybody to the same plan.
Absolutely.
And the plan is there. People cannot change the plan. I was on Israeli television. I said the negotiations taking place now are not about the plan. The plan is already there. You can negotiate how to implement it. And, I think that, of course, everybody sees something for them in the plan. That's the nice thing about this plan. The Turks see this an opportunity to get involved in Gaza and to leverage their involvement in order to gain all kinds of things that have to do with their aspiration to become a hegemon power in the Middle East, and get maybe also some weaponry from the United States and so on and so forth. The Iranians have to take the plan into consideration when they plan how to face it. It's something that's already fait accompli. The plan is the plan. And of course, the Israelis, the Egyptians are lesser players, as you said in the beginning.
Well, they're the channel of funds
They're
flooding
important.
into...
They're neighbors of Gaza, and what's happening in Gaza is going to affect them.
Right.
But for Israel, the plan is the roadmap to a new Middle East. Israel managed to inflict a very heavy damage to the Iranian axis, to Iran itself and to the proxies. And now it has to translate this new reality through the plan to a new Middle East, in Gaza and beyond Gaza. That's now there are conflicts between the way the Middle East is going to look like in Israeli vision and the way the Middle East is going to look like in Turkish vision and in Iranian vision and in Egyptian vision as well. Everybody has a different vision that he sees inside the plan, the things that have to be implemented so that his plan is going to materialize, his vision. That's so we are going to see a competition between the different players in the way they interpret the plan and what is going to be implemented out of it and what's less. And the Americans will have to orchestrate all of that, so that everybody will, as the president was saying, we shall treat everybody fairly. We shall make sure that everybody finds something that he is looking for when we come to the stage of implementing the plan. And when you coming back to the next move has to deal with Hamas threat. And Hamas has to be demilitarized. It's the core of the plan. Right. Nothing is going to happen if Hamas is not going to disarm. And that's why I expect there's going to be a lot of pressure over Hamas. Yes, they refuse. They're going to charge a price for their readiness to disarm. But there's going to be an enormous pressure on them. Not only from Israel, of course from Israel, but from the Americans as well, and from the Americans through Turkey, who would say, Turkey and Qatar are in a very strange situation. If they want to check the benefits that are awaiting them, they have to deliver. They have to deliver Hamas. They gave President Trump the impression that they are able to convince Hamas to disarm. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the core issue on which everything depends. And they have now to prove that they are able to deliver. And so they're going to put a lot of pressure on Hamas to disarm. They're looking all kinds of ways in which Hamas will disarm but will not disarm.
Well, as our colleague Colonel Sibonio says, Qatar equals Hamas. And I think that...
Qatar is first of all Qatar.
No, obviously, but it's
close to
one
Hamas.
that sets the discourse, since it is ultimately the number one backer of this Palestinian group. And it has its leverage, despite understating it over years, for its own interests. And of course, there is a plausible deniability factor, which it has pushed quite vigorously. The moment of truth ultimately came to its back door, and it was forced to take that and to utilize that to its own strategic advantage. And it seems... Absolutely.
Definitely. But I say, yes, Qatar is very close to Hamas, has the leverage and the tools to have an impact on Hamas position. But first and foremost, Qatar is close to Qatar.
Right. It has its own strategic interests.
Its security of Qatar is more important than anything else. And once we carried out an attack in Qatar, the Qataris have understood that it's dangerous to have this leverage to host the leadership of Hamas at home. Mm. And yes, they got now all kinds of commitments, but we have to remember these commitments are temporary. It's not forever. If they fail in convincing Hamas to disarm, then the question arises again. And I think that there's going to be also pressure of the Hamas from inside the Palestinian population in Gaza, because they have paid the heavy price for Hamas 7th of October attempt. So there's going to be pressure from various angles towards Hamas to find a way to be seen as if you have disarmed. What is the real meaning of that is not totally clear, but this is going to be the pressure. And this is extremely important, because what this war is all about now, the focus of this war is about the question of how 7th of October is going to go down in the history of the Palestinians. Is it a glorious day in which we put the Palestinian issue on the forefront of the regional agenda and the national agenda, and we shaken the self-confidence of the Israelis, and it's a move on the way to establishing a Palestinian state and getting rid of Zionism? Or is it a day of catastrophe, of terrible disasters that happened to the Palestinians, and look at the destruction in Gaza and everything else? And if Hamas is going to be the obstacle between moving forward and rebuilding Gaza, and this would mean that the population of Gaza is going to live in out of humanitarian aid for many more years or decades, then it's a terrible failure. So the Hamas is going to be under a lot of pressure to give up. And if they give up the weapons, then people inside the Middle East and especially inside the Palestinian community will be able to say that 7th of October was a mistake. I refer you to the interview. This was, in my mind, was the most important event in the last 2 years. The interview that Musa Abu Marzouk had on Al-Rad.
Just to explain to our viewers who Musa Abu Marzouk is.
Leader of Hamas, one of the leaders of Hamas. Relatively in the middle, not the most extreme one. But he was asked whether, following what happened so far, one can say that Hamas has managed to achieve anything out of October 7th, or was October 7th a terrible failure? And he actually left the interview.
Right.
So that tells you that this is the core of the matter. And if the plan is going to lead us to the point where we can convince everybody that 7th of October was a mistake, then it's a good thing, and we can move forward with all the rest of the and deal with the different approaches that everybody has to the plan. I say so because, look at one of the things that Hamas wanted to achieve was the unity of fronts. They believe that after 7th of October, at least the Palestinian fronts will join in. Maybe also Hezbollah, but definitely the Palestinian fronts. And they did not. Not the people in the West Bank, the Judea and Samaria, Palestinians living there did not join, and not the Arabs living in Israel. This was the expectation of Hamas. And why didn't it happen? Because the lessons learned from the Second Intifada by the people of the West Bank was that Intifada is a bad idea. It's a very bad idea, and that's not repeated. And the same lesson was learned by the Arab Israelis following what happened in Garden of the Walls in 2021. The overall conclusion was that this was a bad idea. Let's not repeat it. And yes, there were some individuals who did all kinds of things, but that's the lesson, that we have to make sure that the Palestinians and the Arabs learn this lesson from October 7th. The Iranians have already learned this lesson, but they might be in a position where they want to escalate in spite of the lesson because they don't have any other option.
Well, we can, of course, dive into the Iranian angle, despite speaking about this often, since the Iranians have been pursuing the same method time and again since, the announcement. Despite Israel focusing on the Iranian threat as early, domestically speaking, and particularly in Judea and Samaria since early 2002, nonetheless, the Iranian focus to ratchet up its operations, to smuggle weapons, and to flood Judea and Samaria with munitions and funds and other types of tools occurred by the announcement of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on the 19th of November of 2014, when Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic, came out and stated publicly the 9 reasons and why and how to eliminate the Jewish state. But I'd like to redivert our attention once more to the Qatari and Turkish angle, since I think it's very important. Qatar has been lately operating to shift the center of gravity from Gaza to Syria. And it seems like Turkey is doing the same. And just in the last week, we saw an agreement between the Islamist Hamas and a couple of organizations that are aligned also with the Muslim Brotherhood in Dir'a Governorate, which is just adjacent to Israel, preparing to establish infrastructure there to be directed against the state of Israel. It's done in full knowledge and cooperation with the Damascus regime of Ahmed al-Shara. How is Israel to operate in this type of climate when we're seeing that there is a shift from the south by those actors to the northern front of Israel?
Well, I think Israel has adopted a new doctrine, new security doctrine, following what happened on the 7th of October, that says that we are not going to allow terror armies or terror groups to deploy next to our borders, wherever it is. That's why we operate the way we operate in Lebanon. That's why we insist on having the perimeter and control of the Philadelphia corridor. In Gaza, that's why we operate against terror cells in Judea and Samaria, in Tulkarem, in Jenin. And that's why we operate the way we operate in the area adjacent to our border in Syria. So I think that if something like that is going to happen, we shall have to take military action in order to prevent it from happening. And we should not hesitate. And we have clarified already that this is going to be our policy. At the same time, if we can reach some sort of an agreement and understanding with Shara that he would refrain from doing so and would not allow it and prevent it himself, all the better. But if not, we shall have to use force. And that's the new doctrine that we employ all over the place. Definitely in Syria. And there's definitely also room for concern because, yes, Qatar, Turkey, and Ahmed al-Shara are all made of the same political affiliation. They're all versions of the of the Muslim Brotherhood. And some of them are more extreme, some are a little bit less extreme, but they all support the idea and the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood supports confronting Israel, including through violent means. And one of the ways to convince Hamas to give up its capabilities in Gaza is to say to them, there is an alternative, move to Syria. There's no alternative. They have to realize there's no alternative. And I think one of the things that we should be worried is that Turkey and Qatar may believe that one of the benefits they are going to get out of this support they gave to the peace plan is going to be American support for their
endeavors in Syria. Right.
And we have to make sure that we have a very close discussion with the Americans about the need to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Right.
Syria doesn't become...
Well, the problem is, though, and this is a problem, that the American ambassador to Turkey is also the special envoy to Syria. Now, his interest is to advance America's interests in Turkey and developing those interests, and he might see Syria as a good method of utilizing it as leverage to other aspects of U.S.-Turkish relations at the expense of other countries, and it seems that that is the case.
Well, I think that Tom Barak is, of course, a player in this respect, but the shots are being called in Washington.
Right.
And we have direct contact with President Trump, who's going to decide, and he has to understand that this is a good idea to make sure that this doesn't happen. That if he wants to see peace in the Middle East, supporting the Muslim Brotherhood is a bad idea. And if you can convince the Muslim Brotherhood to play a positive role, that's wonderful. That's what he did in the peace plan. That's really amazing. But if you let them pursue the ideas of dominance in the Levant, it's not going to help in promoting your peace ideas. And just the opposite. What he needs to do, and I think that Tom Barak also was involved in that, he needs to find a way to bring Syria and Israel closer together, build on the understandings they have that they don't want to see Hezbollah and they don't want to see Iran. And they need stability along the border because stability is critical for Syria these days in order to move forward in the reconstruction plan. And that gives us a golden opportunity to get something different than what Qataris and Turks may want.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and we don't have very much time for this, so in 1 minute, did mention that the campaign is not over. Certain actors are still looking to operate against the State of Israel, namely the Islamic Republic of Iran, its various proxies across the region. We see the Iranians trying to develop their own infrastructure in Syria, which is not fully destroyed. It's still very much there. We're seeing them operating in trying to rehabilitate the Iranian proxy in Lebanon, namely Hezbollah. Is there a certain scenario in which this can be altered by other tools than military means?
Yes, of course. There's a lot of economic pressure and diplomatic pressure on the bad players. And there is a chance that this is going to work, and especially as it is accompanied by a military threat, a credible military threat, a threat that its credibility was proven in June in a very impressive way. So it's, in my mind, something that can be achieved through diplomacy. But as Prime Minister Netanyahu said, the war is not over yet, because the diplomatic effort might fail. So there's a chance it's going to succeed, but it might also fail. And if it fails, we might need to take action.
General Yossi Kuperwasser, President of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. It's always a pleasure.
My pleasure.
I'd like also to thank all of you and take this opportunity to highlight TV7 is a donation-based TV broadcast ministry, and therefore if you're blessed by our daily productions, I'd like to encourage you to support us with a donation. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. From me here in Jerusalem, until our next edition. Shalom. For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.
Jerusalem Studio, now available on Spotify.